Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judy, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the 14-Yard NFL Podcast.
It's that time of the week again. Let's preview Week 6 of the 2023 NFL season. Once again, I'm your host, Sam Moores, and this is the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast. We've got a fun slate this week, including a large later window and the final London game of 2023. And joining me to break down each of the games you can watch on UK TV this week and pick out what to look out for in the rest of the slate is a new guest who I'm sure you'll all be familiar with. He is, of course, Mr. Full 10 Yards and host of the betting podcast. I'm, of course, talking about Tim Monk. Welcome to the pod, Tim. It's great to have you on. Obviously,
it's been
unfamiliar surroundings as well.
I can't remember last time I was on the Full 10 Yards podcast, but I'd imagine it's well over a year. So, glad to be back. Thanks for having me. And let's see if I can knock some of the rust off from an NFL podcast. Obviously, I do the betting podcast, so that's like a second language. But we'll see if I embarrass myself.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be fine, mate. But before we get into Sunday, there's only one place to start, and that's Thursday Night Football, where the Broncos' defense limited Mahomes and company, but their offense couldn't function. The Chiefs won 19-8 in the end, and it's been the opposite of Denver's season so far, really. Their defense has just let the team down all year. Having Justin Simmons back yesterday was obviously would have helped massively. He had a big presence in this game. He had an interception on underthrown ball from Patrick Mahomes as well. The Chiefs dominated the time of possession too. 35 minutes, 25 minutes, had pretty much double the yards that Denver did too. But were 1 of 5 in the red zone, unlimited to just 19 points. Obviously, the Denver defense doing the work where it really mattered. It was Harrison Butker who was a star of the show with 4 field goals made, including a 60-yarder as time expired in the first half. Russell Wilson, on the other hand, 33 interceptions, two back-to-back games against good defenses. Had a stink against the Jets last week as well, after a solid start to the season. Tim, what did you see in this one? Because it's an interesting game. I don't think it really went as many of us thought it would do, because the Denver defense played well, but the offense obviously didn't, and that's what gave the Chiefs the win, because the Chiefs weren't great on offense.
No, I don't think either offense come out with their heads held high or anything to kind of boast home about, which obviously lends itself to the scoreline that we got. I think it was just one of those typical Thursday night games where, obviously Kansas City are a well-oiled machine, so they're always going to kind of get the win, but it kind of gives the defenses a little bit of an edge because, not everyone's going to be as healthy as they were with 7 days rest. But I think it kind of went to script. It just didn't really... It didn't really pan out for the Chiefs on offense, and I think they should have perhaps scored more points. I know Andy Reid coming under a bit of fire with the field goals that he went for, but at the end of the day, that's all they kind of needed to beat the Denver Broncos, and I just think it just exacerbates how bad a position or how bad a situation the Denver Broncos are in. Last couple of years, some of the decisions that they make, obviously Russell Wilson coming in, sending what they did to get him over, and that's a contract that they're not going to get out of anytime soon. And I think as a barometer of how bad the Broncos are at the moment, where Sean Payton is very, very quiet. Start of the season, he was running his mouth, calling out the Jets, and having his sound on whatever you need him to do. But how quiet has he been for the last couple of weeks? You've got Jerry Jeudy being called out by Steve Smith. You've got half of Sean Payton's play calling sheet being broadcast live to the nation, so everyone knows what they're going to do going forward now anyway. But great. Only one few highlights, like say a couple of turnovers, and they limited the Chiefs, and Cortland Sutton had a lovely touchdown, one of the best catches you'll see this year. But certainly it'd be more focused on, I don't know, I promised myself I wouldn't watch the game in 40 because I don't know how much of that 40 minutes would be taken up by Taylor Swift, but Kansas City got the win. Obviously, again, it wasn't pretty, but divisional games sometimes can always be quite funny. That the AFC West and the NFC West seem to have funny divisional games, but no, it's not going to be a game that both teams look back on the season and say, well, we did well here.
It was the Chiefs' 16th straight win against the Broncos, which is just mental to think about, and it shows obviously where they've been in the franchise since Peyton Manning left, and obviously where the Chiefs have been on the opposite, obviously getting Mahomes in the following draft. I think it's weird to see where both teams are at, because Denver, they've left a few wins on the table. They've been in most games. They've lost a few one-score games. They sit at 1-5. They've got another game against the Chiefs coming up very shortly as well.
Yeah.
it sounds like a fire sale could be coming as well. Reports that everyone except from Patrick Surtain potentially could be available, so there could be a lot of movement there as well. It certainly sounds like they're sort of trying to blow this thing up because they've got their coach in Sean Payton, although he's not done that great of a job, throughout on offense throughout a game, because they sort of stall, either in the first half or the second half. They've not played a complete game of offense all season. What do you think will happen with this team? Obviously, because Jerry Jeudy's a big one that's been on the trade block. Steve Smith had some choice words to say about him on NFL Network pre-game last night. It's just an interesting situation with basically every player that team. They cut Frank Clark and Randy Gregory as well.
Yeah,
everyone's going.
Yeah, it screams rebuild, doesn't it? And I think going into the season, I think Sean Payton probably maybe be a bit too egotistical, maybe a bit stubborn to say, okay, I rather than saying we need to do have some drastic changes here, change the culture, change with the way we play, and the change. Rather than he's obviously come in and said, "Oh, don't worry, I can fix this. I can fix Russell Wilson. I can fix all your problems and make them go away." And that's obviously not come to fruition. I wouldn't be surprised to see multiple players leaving. As I say, I don't even think Cortland Sutton's probably felt that loved in the locker room or in the franchise over the last year or two, because he always seems to be on the trade rumor, on the trade block. So I can see a lot of guys leaving, and I think what that will also do, that was kind of cover over the cracks of what Sean Payton's done there so far, because he kind of then will get a bit of a free run to say, okay, look, let me rebuild, and don't chuck me out the door. But I mean, I don't think you've got enough fingers on your hands to point at all the issues that are in the Broncos franchise.
And for them as well, if they do end up with a high pick, you're just looking like, what could they go quarterback? Because this season, Russ hasn't been a problem. He's been, a lot better than he was last year. But obviously, if they're there and you've got a situation where you've got, I don't think they're going to get the number one pick, but you've got maybe Drake May in there or another QB. They're in an interesting situation, because I'm sure Sean Payton would love, a new quarterback to work with, and, for the next however many years.
Yeah, well, I think I can't see them going quarterback, but if they do, I think it's the yesteryear of letting the QB sit for a year to learn everything and kind of get accustomed to and acclimatise to the NFL. They would have that benefit of doing that, because they can play, like I say, unless they trade him, even if they trade him, the dead cap situation for the Broncos is awful. So unless they kind of say, okay, we'll draft a QB, let him sit behind Russell Wilson for a year or two, or and then kind of go from there. But I think if they do get a high pick, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of trade back and get picks late in 2025, 2026 to then do whatever they need to do. But I'd be surprised if they go QB. But it, again, depends how high a pick they get, I guess. But let's say they're not getting out of that Russell Wilson contract very easily.
And as for the Chiefs, they aren't where we know they can be yet. They're still 5-1. At the top of the AFC. If the Dolphins win on Sunday, they'll be at 5-1 with them. They're getting these wins. However ugly it may look.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's gone. You're starting to come to the fore a little bit at how good or how pivotal their defense has actually been this year. They've not allowed teams to score more than 20 points apart from 21 on opening night. So, I think Patrick Mahomes came out this morning and said, we're lucky that the defense is playing well. So, we don't associate Kansas City with only scoring over 30 points once, which was against the Bears. So it kind of just shows you kind of the struggles that they're having. But as you say, what do good and great teams and great coaches and great quarterbacks do? They win when they're not playing very well. And like you say, therefore, was it 4-1? You say I can't remember what we
5-1.
Yeah,
no.
5-1. Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure Travis Kelce is a bit dinged up, and I think they're still working out kind of the wide receiver rotation in terms of what they want to do, how they want to go about it. So I think come the bye week, towards the end of the season, we'll probably see the usual Kansas City Chiefs.
For sure. Moving over to the London game now, it's the Ravens going as the away team against the Titans, the home team. The Ravens are 4.5-point favourites in this one. And what a treat for us in the UK as well, because this year the London Games QBs have been great. We've had Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence. It's been huge, very exciting stuff when in previous years we don't get top 10 quarterbacks overseas. The last time the Ravens came to London, they got blown out by the Jags 40-0 in 2017. The Titans lost 1 year later with Mike Vrabel going for a 2 against the Chargers and it being unsuccessful at the end of the game. This one's a really exciting one, isn't it, Tim? It's just is the probably second most appetizing game after the Jags Bills last week, but the offensive players we've got and some of the defensive players too, the stars we've got in this game are stars we don't normally see in London per se.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the star attraction is going to be Lamar Jackson. Baltimore will have a point to prove after their shambolic performance last week on offense. Jackson was great himself. It wasn't a Lamar Jackson problem. It was wide receivers can't catch the ball. Or Mark Andrews can't catch the ball problem. So if you have 7 drops in the game, you're not gonna be winning many points. But it should be a good game. Should be kind of a hard hitting game. I think Baltimore will win the game. I think after last week's performance and the fact that you can kind of throw on Tennessee will kind of lend itself to Baltimore having a bit more easier of a time, provided that they've travelled okay. Obviously, you can never know. Like I say with Buffalo, I went to the Buffalo game last week against the Jags, and it doesn't really get talked about as much in terms of travel and jet lag and all the rest of it. But it kind of gets taken for granted now because it's so frequent and we've seen so many games. So with all things being equal, I think Baltimore should have enough on both sides of the ball to take care of Tennessee. It'd be interesting to see kind of crowds. I think it may revert to kind of your general. Every man and his dog kind of turned up to this game, whereas the Buffalo game that I went to, I've never seen
Buffalo.
such a partisan
so
crowd at Buffalo. I'm not sure that we'll kind of reach those heights in the Baltimore Tennessee game, but Tennessee are a bit of a funny one. I said on the betting podcast just on Thursday that Tennessee, we just can't seem to be a team I can put my finger on. I'll tout them for a good performance and they underwhelm. I'll tout them for a bad performance and then they'll go and win. Obviously, Traylon Burks hasn't travelled. Not that he's done too much this season, but I assume it'll be a heavy dosage of Derrick Henry, Tajay Spears, and I think Baltimore's kind of rush defense will be able to take care of them.
Yeah, for sure. I think with to go back to the London game as well, especially it'll be a very neutral crowd I think in this one because I was there too last week and it was just the amount of Bills jerseys you see was mental. Obviously a lot of people came from America in the game as well. Obviously the Bills, their mafia travel very well. This one again it'll be a little bit more even, which I think will sort of probably suit both teams, to be honest with you. As you were saying with the Titans, they've been so up and down this year. They've been they'll score 30 points one game, score 3 points the next game, and it's just I think it shows whether this team are well coached. They're not the most talented. They've still got a good defense, but Tannehill was Ryan Tannehill was very up and down. That's what he's been his entire career. They've had a better offensive line this year, which has been a good help for him. So he's not had a too bad of a season. And we saw that last week where he found DeAndre Hopkins for 8 grabs for 140 yards. Obviously, that's his best game as a Titan by far. And the Ravens defense will be will have eyes on him for this one for sure. I think it just feels like it's going to be another low scoring game because again both defenses are great. The Ravens defense is they're both top 10 defense. The Ravens defense especially has been awesome this year. They're tied for second in yards per game. They're second in points per game as well. The Titans are in the top 10 in both of those categories too. And I just I'm going to pick the Ravens too because they're healthier, and it just makes last week's loss look more annoying for them now because they've got all their players back. The defense are back. The defense. You've got Marcus Williams. They've got Marlon Humphrey back now. They did the NFL UK did a video of him trying UK biscuits. I don't know if you saw that on social media. That was something that was quite interesting. He said that jam and cream was the best biscuit, and he did not like digestives, which I'm not surprised by because it's a very non-American food. But
I suppose it's a far cry. Do you remember when teams first started coming over and they used to just tear the absolute expletive out of it of this is England, this is what England do. Like, is it almost as if we're just like some weird like little small island that no one ever goes to or no one knows anything about, and it's like embracing culture. So I mean I don't mind them trying biscuits and all that kind of stuff, but I suppose it's better than what you used to get.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it makes any sense, but I feel like this game will be like a typical AFC North game. I know
like last week
in the AFC South game, but that's kind of the vibes I'm getting from this game, and that's how it will kind of win it in the trench, winning lost in the trenches, and just like heavy hitting, very physical, battling kind of attritional game. I think we'll get in London.
Yeah, and I think had the Ravens won last week, they'd be the clear favourites for the AFC North now. Now they've got the Bengals and their tail. The Steelers are somehow 3-2 as well. Yeah. It just makes you think, okay, if they did won this last week, they would be in a much better situation. So it's a must-win game for them. They might get Odell Beckham back as well. He's been doing a press tour this week. He's listed as questionable, coming back from an ankle injury. It'd be funny if he didn't play now because obviously there's been loads of press about him this week. Sky have done an interview with him and everything as well. And
even if he does play, I think think he's kind of shown how brittle he is. I don't think he's completed many games, and he's been on and off the sidelines. So
again, he's had an ankle issue all year, been in and out of the lineup all year. So again, I think Zay Flowers is by far their number one target, but behind obviously Mark Andrews, who the two of them had some drops last week. But I think with this one, it could be actually just one final thing. It could be Derek Henry's last game as a Titan, or one of his last games. There's a lot of talk that he's going to move in the coming weeks. Another report today, which would be a nice treat for us in the UK, obviously, because one of his first best games in 2018, before when he broke out, was against the Chargers a couple of years ago, or 5 years ago now. God, makes me feel so old. It's this is probably the end of the Derek Henry era as in Tennessee. So it'd be nice to see him have a game. But I'm picking the Ravens in this one.
Yeah, same.
Awesome. On to our final game preview before we get into the rest of the 6 p.m. slate. It is the Seahawks and Cincinnati. The Bengals are 2.5 point favourites in this one. The Seahawks are coming off a bye. The Bengals looked back last week, and it's the matchup I'm really looking forward to seeing in this game is the Seattle defense against the Bengals offense, because the Seahawks defense really struggled in the first 3 weeks. They were very good against the Giants on Monday Night Football, but before the bye. But I don't really think you can take much out of that game.
No,
the Giants have just
the
Giants have been horrific on offense all year. Obviously, Devon Witherspoon, the rookie, has played the last few games after his injury. He's looked super good at the 96-yard pick six of Daniel Jones on that game as well. And then the Bengals offense, they were non-existent for the first 4 games. Obviously, there's a reason why the coaching was a bit different. Obviously, Burrow, especially his injury, was a huge factor on that too. He looked healthier last week. And Jamar Chase had it not only his first touchdown, but his first 3 touchdowns of the year. And the offensive line played better in the second half as well. It was back and forth between the Cardinals and the Bengals the entire first half, and in the second half, the offensive line didn't allow a single sack, and the Bengals really took a strong hold in that game, which is good news for them because it's been pretty bad all season. Tim, what are you seeing in this one?
Yeah, I mean, this should be a absolutely fantastic game. Like I say, it's good to see Joe Burrow back, and I think, let's say, with that Ravens defeat last week, for the Bengals to be 2-3, their season kind of starts now, and the Bengals will be just licking their lips or rubbing their hands or whatever you want to say to we're only 1 game behind, but we've not had Joe Burrow for 4 games. But some of the throws that he made last week to Chase, it's kind of confirmed that he's close, if not kind of fully fit. I don't know again how much the calf injury is going to linger, but as things currently stand, this one should be a really high scoring game. Like you say, the matchup between Chase and Witherspoon should be quite interesting. Obviously, the sparring, the verbal sparring has already happened. DK coming out and saying that Witherspoon will handle Chase, and those are the kind of things that players like Chase will just look at and be like, right, I'm just gonna have you and see how we go. But I think with Seattle, they're just one of those teams that exactly who they are, exactly what you're going to get, and exactly what you're going to they're going to do. But it's also they're one of those teams that are a very good barometer to see how good you are as a team, and I think it'd be a really good test for. I know they're on the road to Cincy, but it'd be a really good test for Joe Burrow and the Bengals to say, okay, look, are we fully back, or have we still got a few question marks? I know T Higgins is doubtful for the one, or he's obviously tending to a rib injury, but I think that what's gone on beforehand for Cincy, 16.6 points per game on average. I think you can just throw it all out the window. I don't think you can necessarily use the past to predict the future in this one. So you kind of look at what the Bengals can achieve. I am surprised they haven't lead on the run a bit more. I know they do keep running out of shotgun, which is absolutely excruciating to watch, and it's not showing Joe Mixon necessarily in a great light, but he's been very productive. But I think, being at home with the Bengals, Joe Burrow, coming back to some sort of himself, I think he'll want to put out a bit of a statement and put the rest of the AFC on notice, say, look, I'm back. I'd really be interested to see Witherspoon versus Chase and whether or not that's someone that Joe Burrow targets, because he doesn't tend to really care or avoid, lockdown corners. He'll just trust Jamar Chase to go up and get it like he has done since he's been in the league.
Yeah, history tells us with Seattle as well, there's going to be a shootout, because most Seahawks games the last 2 years have been like 35-32. Either way, that's what it's been. It's been the last year and a bit. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing. As for the Seahawks, DK Metcalf has also got a rib injury, as T Higgins. He didn't practice on Wednesday, so we'll see what happens with him. Jamal Adams is still limited. He's in concussion protocol too, so it'd be interesting to see if he plays or not. Obviously, he's a he has had a bit of a stick over the last couple of years, Jamal Adams, but he's still like a key piece in that Seahawks defense for sure. So obviously he'd be a big miss. Going up against firepower wise, one of the best offenses in the league. As for the Bengals defense. Going against like the DK Metcalf, Chidobe Awuzie didn't practice on Wednesday, was limited on Thursday with a back injury. He's one of their best corners, so obviously probably the best receiver core in the league, bar the Bengals. With in Seattle, that if he's out, then that is a little bit of a worry for them. But who do you see winning this one, Tim?
I think Cincinnati. Like I say, I think a couple of nickels on Seattle, and obviously Seattle traveling. They obviously wherever they travel, they do have to travel quite a far distance. But I think with Burrow showing what he did last week, being at home, and that's saying now only having the carrot of only being one game behind in the AFC North, I think it'll be an absolute slugfest. So they'll kind of blow for blow. But I think Cincinnati will score more drives than Seattle. I think Cincy will stop Seattle on a few more drives. And I kind of trust Joe Burrow a bit more to get it done than Gino. So I'll take Cincy on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay with you as well there. Even with Seattle being off a bye as well, I think the Bengals they've sort of had their mini bye now. They've had 4 games to test themselves while Burrow's been injured. Now he's fully back. Then I'm expecting them to sort of kick on now. So again, I'm going to go for the Bengals too. On to an all AFC South matchup between the Colts and the Jags. The Jags are at home in a 3.5 point favourites. It's an awesome matchup. Obviously, it's the rematch of the Week 1 game that the Jags won. They're both 3-2 now, both in the playoff position as it is right now. This is a Gardner Minshew revenge game with him obviously starting for the Colts. Anthony Richardson, of course, is out. He's on IR for the next 4 weeks with an AC sprain. It's a lot worse than Derek Carr's one. The Jags might get Devin Lloyd back in this game as well. He missed the 2 games in London with a thumb surgery. He's been limited in practice too. He's questionable at the moment. He might play. Obviously, he had a game in the first one. It'd be nice to see him play again. Obviously, first round pick. And again, the Jags defense has really stole the show the last couple of weeks against the Falcons and the Bills. I've been hyping them up on the podcast all year. I really do like this Jags defense. They've got a lot of, especially at corner as well. But on the defensive line too, Josh Allen and Trevon Walker, who's starting to have a better year now. Obviously, last year he wasn't too much, didn't have too much of an impact as a first overall pick. But yeah, the Jags defense is great, and Trevor Lawrence had a game as well. I just seen it, full picture last week, in person. Like both him and Josh Allen, their pocket presence is so good that they can avoid so many hits because they were under pressure the whole game. Both defensive lines were good, and Lawrence was only sat 3 times. In fact, he could be sat about 10 times last week. And the run game was really good as well, which I think I'm going to pick the Jags because they're at home. If they can establish that run game, I just think they're a little bit too talented to beat the Colts. But knowing this game, the Colts will win this, and it makes the AFC South very interesting if they do win it.
Yeah, I'd say it's the AFC South and the AFC North. I think you've got 2 teams at 3-2 and the other 2 at 2-3. So it's not kind of many would have predicted that coming into week 6. But yeah, I think provided there's no kind of lag or any tiredness coming from the 2. Obviously they've had 2 weeks in London, so I don't know what the kind of hangover will be. But yeah, Jags at home obviously helps, and I think the fact that if Anthony Richardson was in, and it'd be interesting obviously to see what they do with Jonathan Taylor. He was very sparingly used last week, but it's not really a team. It's not really a game where Indianapolis can lean necessarily on the run game because Richardson's not there, and B, kind of Jonathan Taylor's maybe still not quite 100%. So with that Jags run defense as well, it's going to kind of go into Minshew's hands, and obviously he'd love nothing more than to put one on his old team. Be interesting actually to see how many people in the crowd will have Minshew Jags jerseys and Colts jerseys as well. I don't think there'd be many Colts ones, but nevertheless, it's probably someone out there. But yeah, I think Jags would say one of the better performing rush defenses this year, and I just think because of that, and I think with the way that Trevor Lawrence handles himself. I mean, I'm very surprised at how well he did last week and with the noise and and obviously the Buffalo Bills. I was very I didn't really give the Jags a chance last week, but they were very good at how they handled business there, and I think that's kind of confirms where they're at now. I know it's in a tough AFC, but it's with the Jags for me. It's always been I'll believe it when I see it type thing, and that performance last week was one of those for me. So Yeah, I mean it's quite very very pivotal divisional game. Like you say, Indianapolis lost in week 1 to Jacksonville, so it's probably a more important game to Indianapolis than it is Jacksonville. But Indianapolis have scored at least 21 in each game, so they are putting points on the board. That has been with Minshew in some of those games as well. So it could be a fairly high scoring game as long as Minshew doesn't turn the ball over on offense through the air, because I think they might be a bit stymied in the run game.
Yeah, whoever stops the run, I think, wins this game. That's the key to this game for sure. And yeah, like I said, I'm picking the Jags just because I feel they're more they're not one dimensional. But I feel like the Colts probably will be, especially with Gardner Minshew at QB. On to another AFC South team in the Texans. They welcome the Saints. The Saints are 1.5 point favorites on the road. Part of that is because Tank Dell, obviously the good. One of the Stroud's 2 breakout receivers this year is in concussion protocol. It doesn't sound like he's going to play, unfortunately. Same with Robert Woods, who didn't practice either. Another receiver, so that they're a bit banged up in that position. Something to watch in this game, staying at receiver is Chris Olave. He has a toe injury. He 2 times on the sideline and 1 back of the end zone that he couldn't pull it. He couldn't put his feet down to get a catch. The Saints could have had way more production on offense had that been the case, so that is something to keep an eye on. He's a little bit hurt, and there's a couple of times that he and Carr just haven't been able to hit properly this season so far. It's 2 teams that I was higher on. When I did the guide for these, I did go for both of these teams. I was really high on both of them this offseason. I still believe that both could be playoff teams, actually. Obviously, the Texans are 2 and 3. The Saints are in position that they could sneak in as well as the Falcons and the Bucs. So all had a pretty good season so far. And I knew CJ Stroud would be this good as well, because he's in a really good offense for him. He's in the San Francisco style offense. So Bobby Slowick has come over with D'Amico Ryans. It suits his skill set as well, because he is a very accurate quarterback. Give him time to throw, and he can really thread the needle, which he'll get now with obviously Larry Tunsil back and Titus Howard back as well. The Texans have been banged up on O-line all year, and they need to have a better protection now going into this game, because the Saints pass rush is one of the best in the league so far this year. We saw that Matt Jones got absolutely killed last week by Kyle Granderson and Cameron Jordan, and it's for me I'm going to pick the Saints just because I feel like their defense is a good test for Stroud. They're top 5 in yards and points per game, 7th most turnovers as well. His first turnover may come in this game, but again, this is a really under the radar game this week. I'm really looking forward to watching this back on Monday morning.
Yeah, I think it's one of those fascinating games for the kind of the purists. I don't think there'll be many points in this one. I think it'd be very similar to Houston Atlanta last week, where it's just going to be kind of move your pawn forward a little bit, and then someone else moves the pawn forward, and it's just very slow movement type stuff. And so there are a lot of injuries on offense on both sides. I'm not overly sure that I know that the Saints obviously shut out the New England and scored 30 odd points last week, but I think this one will be very kind of again similar scoreline at 17-19 or within a couple of points. Obviously, at the Vegas line lends itself to that anyway. But yeah, I think I'm just impressed with what CJ Stroud's doing. That's he's getting his tackle back now. But you see on Twitter, on social media, like how some of the stuff he says, the way he comes across. I think he was my favorite quarterback coming out of the draft, and it's nice to see. Obviously, I was a big Justin Fields fan as well, so maybe it's just a higher state thing I have. But CJ Stroud is just kind of on a bit of a quest. He's on that path now to for offensive rookie of the year, and I think getting his tackles back. I think this is where I'm going to take Houston in this game because I just don't see outside of Alvin Kamara. I think the Saints might struggle to move the ball a little bit, and they don't tend to travel very well. But I really like Houston. I'm excited to see where they're going. Obviously, I think they're a bit ahead of schedule than everyone thought that they were going to be. But like I say, this Saints defense would be a great litmus test for Stroud, because like you say, they're top 5 in quite a lot of metrics, whether it's passing or rushing. So I think for Houston, it'll be a good barometer to say, okay, how good are we, or how far have we still got to go? So for New Orleans, it's the first of 3 games straight against AFC South. So that was quite interesting. It's always quite funny how you get some quirks in the schedule. But New Orleans are 2-0 against AFC teams so far this year. So and obviously it'd be interesting to see how Houston respond to that setback last week against Atlanta with the field goal late in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy if the Texans were to win because it made my prediction look really good. Because I think I had them the second best team in the AFC South when we did our predictions on this podcast, and I had Stroud as rookie of the year as well. So that makes me look really good. So I don't mind that. Moving over to another rookie QB in Bryce Young, he heads to Miami where the Dolphins are 13.5-point favourites. Obviously, it's the battle of two former Alabama QBs, Bryce Young and Tua Tagovailoa. The Dolphins are very banged up going into this game, so Carolina might feel like they have got a little bit of a break, but they're not entirely healthy themselves. Devon Achane is on IR now, but the Panthers could be without Miles Sanders. He's got a shoulder injury. So even there's two top running backs out of this game. There's reports that the Panthers offense has been more advanced than the Houston the Indianapolis offense that obviously Stroud and Richardson are in. So there's reports that Carolina are going to sort of try and simplify the game for Bryce, obviously because he's been by far the worst quarterback so far this year. We'll see what that looks like in this game. And it's a good sort of test for the Dolphins defense as well, because it's been not great under Fangio the first 4 games of the season. Last week against the Giants, obviously, it was a lot better. But again, with the Giants, you don't really know. You can't really take much away from that. So
we'll get to Sunday Night Football in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good battle between those two units. We'll see what they really are. The Panthers' defense hasn't been great, and Brian Burns is hurt too, so it may be a tough day in the offense office for them, especially going up against the Dolphins offense, which has been the greatest offense ever for the first 5 games of the season. But they'll be encouraged by the news that the Dolphins could be without right tackle Robert Hunt and centre Connor Williams, as well as obviously left tackle Teron Armstead as well. So that it's the most banged up the Finns offensive line has been all year. Without Armstead and Williams, they've actually done quite well at protecting Tua. He's been one of the least sacked quarterbacks this year. But with Hunt gone, we'll see how much that changes, because that's your 3 best offensive linemen missing. So you're left with Austin Jackson and Liam Eichenberg, who have been turnstiles mainly other than this year. But the rest of the other 2 years of their career, they've been turnstiles. So 3 years in Jackson's case as well. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm still picking Miami. I think they're far too talented to lose to Carolina, but I think the spread's 13.5. I think if I was a better man, I'd go under in that one. Just because of all the injuries that Miami have, because they're really banged up.
Yeah, game does scream unders for me. Obviously, Miami home comforts, and like I say, that's the exact word that I used for Carolina's offensive line is just turnstiles. I mean, there's a couple of things like you say they're going to simplify the offense, but why don't you just give them a simplified one to start with and then bring them along rather than drop him in? I don't know why they do it to some of these rookie quarterbacks. Just throw them in the deep end and see if they sink or swim. But the problem is that most of them will sink. Why don't you just start simple and then add things as you go along, especially when you've got an offensive line that's given you. I mean, I'm not an offensive line guru. I don't know too much about that side of the game, but by far the offensive line for the Carolina Panthers is one of the worst I've ever seen since I've watched football. It doesn't help. Their defense has got some injuries. Obviously, JC Horn's out as well. But I'd still expect Miami, with how well coached and how well schemed they are, to just still have way too much for Carolina. 14 points is probably about right. And like I say, if from a betting standpoint, it's probably just one I'd leave alone. But the 2 games that they've played at Hard Rock Stadium, Miami, 101 points and 1,250 yards of offense. Obviously, smashing the Broncos for 70 points is going to do that. But I think obviously, Achane going down isn't great, because whenever he touches the ball, he's just a highlight reel waiting to happen. So I think they'll probably be. I think Jeffrey Wilson's window is going to be activated, and obviously they've got a whole host of guys. Salvon Ahmed, Chris Brooks. So I think in that scheme, in the way that Mark McDaniel coaches the guys and how they go about the offense, we haven't even talked about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle yet. So I think they'll be absolutely fine. And I think. Carolina, I think they'll just be gasping for that bye week next week. I'm surprised that when Young got injured, that they didn't leave him out for another week or two, give Dalton a few more weeks, just so that kind of Young can take in and reflect on the first couple of starts that he had, come back in and maybe a bit more settled. But like when say you've got guys that are just letting defensive players through, and I think like say Van Ginkel and Ogbar will have good games here for Miami on the defense. And I think it's all too much for Carolina and Bryce Young at the moment, and like I say, not even having a run game to lean on, because it's so bad on the offensive line that it's just I just can't see where Carolina get points or get wins from at all this season. So I know they put up a lot of points in garbage time last week against the Lions, and Young kind of didn't necessarily flex his muscles.
He actually looked all right against the Lions.
He did.
Turnovers at the start that cost him.
Yeah, but I say until they get the offensive line sorted out, Carolina again they don't have their first round pick next year either. So the Bears are very much happy about that.
Yeah, for sure. Moving over to one of the biggest spreads this week, and it's because of the news that it sounds like Deshaun Watson will miss this game. The Niners are 9.5-point favourites now going into Cleveland. It was 6.5 at the start of the day. The injury, the rotator cuff injury, is worse than feared. Obviously it sounds like he was going to be healthy after the bye week, but coming out of the bye week, it looks like it'll be Thompson Robinson again. Looking at this game, sort of wondering, can the Browns defense slow down the Niners offense? Because the Cowboys defense had a hard job at that. Obviously, the Cowboys defense weren't great in the middle of the field all season, so that's the Niners just targeted that. But it's two of the best defenses in the league in back-to-back weeks for the Niners. With this one as well, I'm interested to see how it goes. Obviously, I'm going to pick the Niners, especially with a rookie quarterback going against them. But I want to see just how good the Browns defense can play against them, because obviously they've not had that big of a test, but numerically they're by far the best defense this year. Obviously, they've had 400 yards less than anybody else, 500 yards less than anybody else. Even before the bye week. So we'll see how this one fares. But especially with how banged up the Browns are, the Niners are going to win this one. I might even go for I'll go for the over at 9.5. Genuinely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of the games where I think that San Francisco get out to a very quickly, like 10-0 or something. And I don't see the Cleveland Browns scoring more than 10 points. I'd be even surprised if they score a touchdown, to be quite honest. It is a real shame that Deshaun Watson isn't playing in this one. I know he's not been the Deshaun Watson of peak Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, but I think even just having him there would have made this a real slobber knocker of the game. And I think the Cleveland defense would have a bit more grip between their teeth to say, okay, look, let's have a real go here. But like I say, San Francisco just very irresistible at the moment on both sides of the ball. Rightly the favourites for the NFC. Demolished my Cowboys on prime time. Not that I didn't see anything else coming, because if you come listen to me on Thursday nights, and I'll just bash Mike McCarthy every week. I think it'll be a very low scoring game, and I say once San Francisco have scored a touchdown or two, I think that'll be kind of all she wrote. But similar to you, I'm very fascinated to see what the Cleveland defense, especially in the early stages when it is within a one score game, kind of how they go up against the San Francisco offense. So that's kind of they've had the bye week, so they've had a good prep on that side of the ball. Obviously, they were prepping for Deshaun Watson to come in, but I think the Cleveland defense against the San Francisco offense is going to be a fascinating watch, just from a kind of narrative or just kind of from an execution standpoint. But I just can't see Cleveland scoring more than 7 points, to be quite honest.
Yeah, again, this is one I will have my eyes on. Going back, I just realised we skipped over the Washington-Atlanta game, so we'll go back to that one. The Falcons are 2.5-point favourites in this one. For a UK perspective, it sounds like Efe Obada will be back. He's designated to return from IR this week. And Washington are looking to put up a better defence display than they did against the Bears, because they're now one of the worst defenses statistically through 5 weeks, and they've got a lot more talent than that shows. So and they could only score 20 on a defense that is right there with them in every category. Sam Howell's been very up and down in starts. Obviously, Washington game was good. It was okay against the Commanders, very bad against the Bills week before that. We'll see what we get from this one. As for Atlanta, they'll be encouraged by what they saw from Desmond Ridder last week. A good bounce back game after the London game. Obviously, over 300 yards passing. He's also unbeaten at home in his college or NFL career, which is just a mental stat. Obviously, the Falcons are at home in this game too. We'll see if that streak carries on after this game. But they'll be going back to, and hoping to establish the run game, because the Texans did quite well at stopping that last week, as did the Lions as well. In the losses that the Falcons have had, they've not run the ball well. So if the Falcons can run the ball, I'd pick them to win this game. But it's whether they can or not. That's the real question. And the Washington D line, on paper should look really good. So I'm going to go for Washington as a bit of an upset here in Atlanta, but I think this one will be really close.
Yeah, it'd be interesting for a couple of reasons. I'll take Atlanta to win the game, and like say, you must have just started my notes, because that's Ridder is obviously undefeated at home. And like I say, it was a really good performance last week. I don't think it's a performance that many people think he had in his locker. So, if you look at the home and away splits for Atlanta, they're quite staggering as well. So at home, they've always scored 21 points or more. If they were away, they've not scored more than 7. So, obviously, Atlanta fans would be hoping that for at least this week that kind of trend continues. But it feels like they're getting it a bit together, Atlanta. saying hopefully Ridder can continue to play how he's played, because then that will obviously help Bijan in the run game as well. But yeah, Washington, be interesting to see how Sam Howell performs in this one. Obviously they beat him on Thursday Night Football by the Bears last week. Like I say, Howell's been very scattergun, very up and down. 29 sacks he's had, which is the most in the league. So again, similar to Carolina, when you've got obviously it's not necessarily a QB stat, but if you're holding on for the ball too long, or you've got an offensive line that's letting guys through, you're taking 50 plus hits, 29 sacks, you're gonna be a bit jittery. You're not going to get into any rhythm, which then that leads to bad decisions, turnovers, which then costs you games. So be interesting to see if or how the Washington Commanders do bounce back. Like you say, the defense, obviously, on paper, does look very good, but last 4 games they've given up at least 30 points in all of those. So you can't win games continually giving up 30 odd points. I'm not saying that Atlanta will put 30 points up in this one, but defense may be slightly overrated, because I held them in quite high regard, especially that front defensive line with all the amount of draft capital that they've spent on there. I'd be interested to see how the Commanders kind of respond, because they are at the bottom of the NFC's kind of looking up. They started well, but it seems it's kind of that crossroads game for the Commanders, where it's just like, might be just a bit of a bump in the road, or are they just going down the path of kind of Ron Rivera's kind of losing it a little bit here, and might need to make a change at quarterback, and because he's had a few questions this year already, Ron Rivera, about Sam Howell. So it'd be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. But I think Atlanta will probably be too good at home here.
Yeah, you mentioned the offensive line as well. I think that's sort of a Howell problem as well, because he's the worst in the league this year at feeling pressure. He's going down on 32% of pressure. His pressure to sack percentage, which is the worst in the league by quite a margin. Ridder is not great at that either. He's a bit like Tannehill. He just can come and suck a little bit when there's people around him. Obviously, that's good and bad for Arthur Smith, because obviously Tannehill reached the AFC Championship game with Arthur Smith as a play caller as well, and they're very similar in other aspects too. But I think with these two, they do like to take a salad. You hold the ball for a little bit too long, so I'm interested to see who has the better day in that aspect. But I've at Washington, I think they're in need of a game ready to sort of prove that they are this, and if they aren't, then maybe questions will be asked. Moving over to the final game of the 6 p.m. slate, it is the Vikings going into Chicago. The Vikings are 2.5-point favourites, and this game is way less appealing about Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison is questionable with an ankle too. Could be out without their top 2 targets. So if I was you, I'd pick up KJ Osborne in fantasy. As for Chicago, they got a similar thing, similar story in the run game. It sounds like they're one of the most run-heavy offenses in the league. They were the number 1 run-heavy offense last year, but they're likely to be without Roschon Johnson, Khalil Herbert, and Travis Homer, actually first, second, and fourth string running backs. So it looks like it'll be Deontay Foreman having a big day in that aspect. Carries wise, we'll see if there's anybody else that sort of gets chucked in there too. But they're probably about 3 of the running backs. Also Cole Kmet too. He's had an awesome year. He's questionable with a hamstring. If he plays, Chicago could win, but without him, I don't think the Bears have any chance. Both of these teams are really. I mean, they're just the Bears are. They've been bad, worse than expected, but there's still like a ceiling where you sort of expect them to be this bad. The Vikings, they've played well. They just keep turning the ball over and costing themselves. They lead the league in fumbles. They lead the league in turnovers. And it's not really been Kirk Cousins' problem. But I sort of feel sorry for Kirk here, because they're throwing away games. Again, they could have won in Tampa Bay. They could have won against Philly. They could have won against the Chargers. That's 3. They could quite easily be sat here 3-2. They're all 4-1. They were. They had a chance to take the lead against the Chiefs last week at the end of the game, and Kirk Cousins took a sack. They've been in every single one of their games. Obviously, 1-4 in 1-score games this year. I just look at them. I'm just like, what is going on with this team? And I think it's a perfect get-right game for them without Jefferson. But God, this game is just not appealing at all, really, is it?
No, certainly not with Jefferson kind of being out. But I think 1-score game karma kind of hit Minnesota this year, because they were so good at it last year. So kind of you can't continue to rely on winning 1-score games, because yeah, like I say, like this season, it's going to come back to bite them. But yeah, I think you'll probably see from Chicago's side with all the running backs that have been out, probably more design runs for Justin Fields. There was 11 attempts last week.
They need to do more of that because that's what he's good at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of ad libbing. He's obviously seemed to have found he's always had that connection with DJ Moore. I'm not a big fan of the coaching staff here at Chicago, and I don't think they're necessarily developing Justin Fields very well or doing the right things to help him improve. But yeah, I'm going to go for an upset in this one. I'm going to take Chicago to win it. I think I'm not necessarily saying that the win last week against Washington is kind of the turning point, but it's amazing what a win will do for a team that went 14 straight losses, and these are the kind of things that you can't really kind of script. So like buses, I think they'll just somehow get a win here by a point or like a last second field goal or something like that. Because like I say, I think Minnesota, it doesn't rain but it pours, so I think they're kind of getting their comeuppance in that respect. But Minnesota are by far the better team. They do have a bit of kind of a frisky run defense, so not having the running back, even just Donta Foreman running up the middle, I think he'll get a lot of volume, but he won't necessarily get a lot of yards. So I think kind of bootlegs and designed runs for Justin Fields is kind of the way the Chicago should go about it, and then use that to do play actions on to DJ Moore, because I think of the back end of the Vikings defense can be got at as well. So yeah, I think Justin Fields, I think he'll just find a way to get it done. It'd be interesting to see how Jordan Addison, injury or not, does come. I think people are waiting for him not necessarily to step into the one, but come to the four a little bit and see what he's all about. Because he's always going to be in Justin Jefferson's shadow, but he's been taking snaps behind KJ Osborne. He's kind of been the three. So I know people are saying, oh, he'll be the one now, and I can see where they're kind of going with that. But it'd be interesting to see how Jordan Addison does with kind of more focused attention or more game planning around him, and to see what he does, because I think quite a lot of them are expecting maybe a bit more out of him, or at least to be on the field a bit more. So yeah, it's not something I'm not gonna watch this game for him back in form. I might watch the 5-minute highlights. I can't commit to the 40-minute game, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, because you've got Detroit Lions a couple of games ahead in the NFC North, so it's quite an important game for these two teams, not necessarily divisional wise, but if they want any aspirations for making the playoffs, this is a game that both of them will need to win.
Yeah, and I think just I thought as well, Brian Flores statistically has quite a bad record against Russian quarterbacks too. So does Belichick, actually, to be fair. I think it's a very New England scheme thing where the mobile quarterbacks tend to do quite well against this defense. So there is that too to see. But I'm going to go for the Vikings just because I think they're way too talented. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Chicago pull this one out the bag for sure. Okay, moving on to the 9 p.m. slate. The main game, the one on Sky this week, is the Lions heading to Tampa Bay. It's a return of the Creamsicles to Tampa Bay as well. I look forward to seeing them because they look awesome, especially like the new Nike versions as well. The Bucks are off a bye at 3-1. The Lions are at 4-1. Saying the Lions are 4-1 just feels so mental because in my time watching football, yeah, exactly. In my time watching football, I mean, in my lifetime, the Lions have won a playoff game. Going and then 10 years before my lifetime, that was the last time the Lions won a playoff game. So it's and they won the division as well in 93. So that's 30 years since they won the NFC North last. They're probably on the way to do that for the first time in 30 years, as I said. What I'm looking forward to seeing in this game is the Lions offense against the Bucks defense. Ben Johnson's offense is rolling again. He scored 42 last week without Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs. They're 4th in points this year, 5th in yards as well. But they've got tough opponents this week in the Bucks defense. It's got a lot of their Super Bowl starters on that defense. They're very good, very talented defense. They're top 10 in most categories, but most importantly, second in the red zone this year. So, but what they're down as their third down defense with their 29th. So we'll see how that pans out in this game. It sounds more possible that Amon-Ra St. Brown will be back than Jahmyr Gibbs. He's got a hamstring. He didn't practice, so it doesn't sound like it's very good. But in the last day, Sam Laporta has picked up a calf injury, which is unfortunate. He didn't practice Thursday, so it doesn't sound like he's going to play, unfortunately, which is a shame for me because I've got him in fantasy. So I'm going to have to go back to Cole Kmet this week. But either way, both of them have been great. But I went very tight end heavy this year. Can the Lions produce the same amount of offense with the players missing? That's what I'm looking towards this game, because the Tampa Bay are a much tougher test than Carolina last week.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Tampa Bay are a tougher team to beat than kind of everyone kind of thought with Baker Mayfield. I think even myself included, I think I was expecting Baker to fall flat on his face by now. So obviously early bye, you maybe expect at the very least a couple of good performances coming out of the bye as well. So Detroit's, like say, only loss was Seattle, and that was during overtime. Last 3 wins have all been by 14 points or more. Okay, they've not beaten a great deal, but it's a sign of a good team that they're comfortably winning these games, even with the injuries that they've had. You mentioned there no Gibbs and Laporta and whatnot, but so it'd be another kind of heavy dose of Monty. But I say the Bucs defense is got the stars on it, and led them as well as Brady to a Super Bowl. So not everyone. There's barely any departures from that team. So it'd be interesting to see if Mike Evans can go, because I think quite a lot of the Bucs' success has been that Baker to Evans being able to stretch the field and get chunk plays is quite imperative to kind of the way Baker plays. So if he doesn't go, I think you might see a Tampa Bay, even if they've come off the bye, struggle a little bit on offense, because let's say they don't really get much out of the run game. And let's say you've only got Chris Godwin and Cade Otton, but he's not really pulled up any trees this season either. So I think Detroit will win. Regardless of who goes and who doesn't go in this one, but I think it could be a high scorer. The pass defenses on both sides can be got at, and I think both run games will get stuffed a little bit. So you'll either probably get like 75-yard touchdown drives, or you get 3 and outs. I don't think you'll get much either way. And let's say we mentioned about the AFC South and the AFC North being quite hotly contested. Obviously, we've got a 3-way tie for the NFC South at the moment, with Tampa, Atlanta, and New Orleans. So again, very important game for Tampa. There's one they want to win off the bye at home as well. So be interesting. It's another good test for Detroit, because I feel like there's quite a lot of teams. There's very few teams that we know are good and are playing well. Obviously, San Francisco far clear of all the rest of them, and then we know a couple of bad teams, and we'll get to that game shortly in a minute. But I think there's a lot of teams in the middle cluster there, where I think this week will kind of tell us or provide a bit more of a clearer picture on, okay, this, from a power ranking standpoint, or just, how good is this team? How bad is that team? Because you'll have enough of a form line, you'll have enough of kind of cross-referenced games and, joining all the dots to say, okay, I think Detroit and Tampa Bay is a perfect example of that this week.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned it there. I'm loving watching the Bucs offense this year. Baker has sort of taken his last chance as a starter and ran with it. He's playing like he did in the year the Browns got to the playoffs. When he had time to throw. If you give Baker an offensive line, I think like he could be a good quarterback, and that's the key. He's actually, the Bucs offensive line. Obviously they're missing that, so Ryan Jensen. They've actually played pretty well. They're much better than they did for Tom Brady last year, which has been a good sign for them, and that was my sort of worry of the Bucs coming into this year. But that's been a nice surprise.
That was some of the reason why I thought Baker wouldn't do very well, because I didn't have much faith in the offensive line. But also I think that's a testament to how they've brought into Baker Mayfield, and they've brought into, because they could, all the rest of the team could easily look at Baker Mayfield and say, oh, I can't be, but I'm not playing for this guy. He's more interested in endorsements rather than playing football, blah blah blah. But they seem to have kind of bought in, and they're playing for him. So Baker's obviously doing something right, either in the practice field or he's taking them out to some nice dinners or something. But it's nice to see that, like say, he's getting a bit of protection. He can show that he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm still going to pick the Lions, but I do like what I see from the Bucs, and I think they could make this a close one. You mentioned it there. Moving over to one of the worst teams at Football Bowl, is Jimmy and Josh McDaniels welcome the Patriots to Vegas. The big one in this one is that Devontae Adams is questionable with a shoulder injury. Hopefully he can go, because otherwise this game is really low on talent. Bill Belichick against disciples really has not actually fared that well recently. He lost to Brian Flores a fair few times. Obviously, he lost to McDaniels last year as well in the odd game that finished off with the Chandler Jones stiff arm of Matt Jones for a touchdown. That was one of the weirdest games last year. 2 of the league's worst offenses. New England are only scoring on 16.1% of drives, the league worst. Vegas is scoring on 28% the time, which is 28th, so that just shows how bad the New England offense has been this year. And it could be without Juju Smith-Schuster and Demario Douglas, 2 at receiver, both out of concussion. So it's just, I don't know what to think of this one really. The Patriots, obviously they sort of pride themselves on defense, but they've lost Matt Judon, they've lost Christian Gonzalez over the last couple of weeks. That's 2 really big pieces in that defense. The Raiders defense has played better than many people thought it would do. It's middle of the road this year rather than sort of right at the bottom of the league with the Chargers like it was last year. Yeah, I don't really know what to think of this one. The Raiders are 2.5-point favourites in this one. I probably lean towards the Patriots just because I think Belichick's really under pressure now because the last 2 weeks have been dreadful. Obviously, the two biggest losses of his career. But yeah, this one I really don't know what to make of it.
No, I mean, I'll probably take the Raiders. I think I'm not necessarily going to say it's going to end Bill Belichick's tenure, but I think considering what's gone on this season and then losing to Josh McDaniels and
Second time in a row as well.
Raiders, it's just like he must get out of bed on. He'll get out of bed on Monday and think, like, why am I still doing this? It really has been kind of feast to famine for Patriots fans and Bill Belichick as well. But it's going to be a really dull, low-scoring affair. So cue the 31-28, high-scoring shootout. But yeah, I think the Raiders will have a few more players, especially if Adams can go to kind of score a few more points. I don't, obviously the Patriots were shut out last week against New Orleans. Obviously they've got a good defense as well, but on the defensive side where Belichick normally excels, like you say, no Judon, no Gonzalez, I just think that there's too many players there like Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs. I think they've just got enough there on offense to maybe win, but I think it's going to be something like a 10-7 game or 11-7 game or something ridiculously stupid like that. But yeah, I can't back a team that scored 3 points in the last 2 weeks effectively. I know that the Patriots have had a hard time of it in terms of schedule or whatnot, but really I can't. You just have to play who's in front of you. So because I'm not sure how Raiders win games. They've not scored more than 18 points in any game this season, and they've only had over 300 yards on total offense, but they've still managed to win 2 games. So I think the defense has been quite opportunistic, which has kind of helped carry the load a little bit. Max Crosby doing a lot of the heavy lifting. He's just an absolute animal. So I just think with Mac Jones at quarterback, Max Crosby, I think we'll have a decent day. But I say I barely see more than 20 points being scored in this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a slog for sure. Moving over to the capital, well, not the capital, but the media home of America, New York and the Jets. They host the Eagles again without Rodgers. This game will be way more appetizing if Aaron Rodgers was in this game, which is why the league flexed Lions Tampa Bay to this window. I think with this one, what I'm looking for is the Eagles' defensive line against the banged-up Jets offensive line. It's just a scary thought, really. They lost Elijah Vera-Tucker to IR this week as he's got an Achilles, which just doesn't sound very good at all. The Jets' defense has, though, been confusing quarterbacks, and this is what the interesting thing in this game. I saw Steve Palazzolo from PFF tweet out this last night. The PFF passing grades against the Jets this season: Dak 66.7, Matt Jones 57.8, Josh Allen 52.3, and Patrick Mahomes 48.4 on top of the Russell Wilson 43.5 last week. So yeah, they held Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Russell Wilson to their worst grades all season. That's pretty impressive, but I think the Eagles are probably just too good to lose to the Jets. I was impressed. I've been semi-impressed with what I've seen from Zach Wilson last couple of weeks. I was impressed at the end of the Buffalo game too, but I think the Eagles are just too good, and they've really hit. They're starting to hit a groove now. Start of the season they're a bit iffy, but last couple of weeks the Eagles have started to hit a groove, and I think I can't pick against them. But I think I would be tempted to bet the under. 7.5 is quite a high score against a high spread against this pretty good defense.
Yeah, it was 6.5 because that's what I took as my best spread of the week on the betting podcast on Thursday. So obviously there's been a bit of money for that. Yeah, I mean, I just can't see, like you mentioned there, for me, that defensive line for Philadelphia against the offensive line for the Jets is just kind of where, it's going to be a low scorer. And I think Philadelphia will probably score a defensive touchdown or something, but I can't have Zach Wilson, despite an improved performance recently. I think it'll kind of be a horror show for them. And I think at some point the Jets defense are just going to tire in the season, and it's just going to be a bit of a free for all. So at the moment, it's kind of the house of cards are all stuck together, and it's all kind of still glued together. But I think at some point it's all going to come crashing down for the Jets, which is a shame, because you just think how much of a tasty matchup this could have been, or how well the Jets could have, how far the Jets could have gone this season. Obviously, it's nice to see Breece Hall back, and he was unloaded last week. But yeah, I don't see, this isn't a team that's going to, especially when good defenses come to town or good teams come to town, I don't think you're going to see the Jets be scoring many points despite the best efforts of the defense. So it'd be interesting to see how Hurts does. They obviously the Eagles haven't pulled up many trees this year. Hurts. And the other thing they have to be wary about is that they don't maybe overlook this game because they've got Miami at home next week, which is quite easy to overlook to say, okay, yeah, we'll take care of the Jets and then we'll plan for kind of Miami. So there is that to kind of combat as well. I'm sure they will because they're well coached. But, Hurts has only thrown 6 touchdowns through the air this season, 4 interceptions. He has 4 tush-push TDs, but I'd say he's not what the Jalen Hurts we kind of expect. And again, it's a good litmus test for where Philadelphia are on offense. Obviously, they're running the ball very well with that offensive line. But yeah, Jets defense will cause 1 or 2 problems. But I think, I think the Philadelphia defense will allow the pressure to be taken off the offense because I don't think they'll need to score more than 14, 17 points to win the game. I think they'll obviously score more than that. But yeah, I think I'll take Philadelphia by double digits.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one for sure. And I think I will watch this. I have my eyes on this one on Sunday night, I think. Finishing off with an all NFC West matchup between the Cardinals and the Rams. Before the year, the Rams are 6.5 point favourites. Before the year, these teams were sort of widely regarded as 2 of the worst teams in football, sort of talented wise at least. But so far this season, they've both been in most games and they're certainly coached very well. You can see that. The Cardinals lost James Conner to IR this week, so it looks like it's sort of going to be a backfield share between Keontae Ingram and Amelia DiMercado. But yeah, I think with this one, I'm gonna go for the Rams just because I feel like they've got more firepower in this game. But I'm really excited to watch this just because it's 2 very well coached teams, 2 no name teams that we thought going into the season because a lot of players who obviously aren't known NFL starters starting on these teams. But yeah, so especially on defense as well. But I've been really intrigued by these teams. I've watched every one of their games so far this year, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm going to pick the Rams just because I think, especially if Cooper Kupp back as well, they're and Stafford's playing well as well. I think they'd just be a little bit too good for the Cardinals. But I think the defense will make this a game.
Yeah, it's certainly 2 teams that have exceeded expectations. If you did a grade report, they'd probably both have A's or B's because you think, if like say is Arizona were the favourites to be the number 1 overall pick, and the Rams could have been anything because they just had a wholesale on defense. So, and I think that what that's partly down to is because their coaches are making it fun to play the game. It looks like they're enjoying themselves when they're buying into the schemes, they're buying into the way that they do things. James Conner obviously a big miss for the Cardinals, but like I say, DiMercado came in last week and looked like he again, it just shows you how interchangeable and how unfortunately unvalued running backs are in the league with because you can just have kind of anyone of decent standards running back there and getting production. But yeah, like I say, I'll take the Rams at home as well. I think it could be another sneaky high scoring one. Yeah, I too. I've enjoyed watching the Cardinals kind of give it a good go this year. Obviously, they beat the Cowboys as well. So, but it'd be interesting to see kind of how they play it with Kyler. Obviously, that's been fairly quiet on that news front for the last couple of weeks. Obviously, he was talking a little bit about he want to come back as soon as he can. But it'd be interesting to kind of see how they juggle that kind of storyline. And like you say, yeah, Cooper Kupp's kind of come back and picked off where he left off last season before he got injured, and he's got a lovely 1-2. Matthew Stafford's got a lovely 1-2 there now with Puka Nacua as well. So it'd be interesting to kind of see. Obviously the division is probably out of reach. It's fair to say with San Francisco being who they are and how far they are ahead. But even both of these teams, kind of whoever gets the win or whoever gets the loss, kind of what they feel from a playoff push standpoint, because that 6 and 7 seed is certainly up for grabs with teams like Minnesota not doing very well. The NFC South having three teams are tied at the top. So I think for both teams, I think it's a very very winnable game. The Rams have the Steelers at home as well next week. So again, Rams can maybe put a few wins together, and they may feel that they've got enough there to push forward for a playoff spot, which would be huge considering, like I say, expectations weren't there at all this season. But yeah, it should be a fun game. I think it would just be one of those typical NFC West 9:25 games that would be just a bit quite fun to watch because it'll be well played. It'll be a well executed game in terms of production, either through the air or on the ground. So it should be a fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it, as I said. Finishing off Sunday with some like football, the Giants heading into Buffalo. Obviously, Brian Dable returning to Buffalo. It sounds like the Giants could be about Daniel Jones, Aaron Waddle, Andrew Thomas. Obviously, 3 key offensive players there. Saquon's still questionable. Hoping he plays. If he does, he might fancy his chances against the Bills defense that sort of let up a ton of rushing yards last week. And especially with the Bills defense without Matt Milano, who unfortunately is done for the year with his leg injury. But even with all these injuries, they've got Dalton Kincaid and concussion protocol. Dawson Knox is questionable too. Even with all of them, Buffalo are just too good to lose this game, aren't they? Because the Giants, it may be less than 14.5 points. Obviously, 15 points is quite a lot of a margin. But I think Buffalo, they're just, especially after last week, they'll be, looking to prove a point, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there with the last bit about saying want to put the wrongs to right there from last week as well. I've called this game the Brian Day Bowl because he's obviously Brian Day Bowl. But I mean, if Daniel Jones doesn't go, I think Saquon Barkley's unlikely to go. Again, similar. I just don't see how the Giants are getting to 10 points outside of garbage time or when the game's got the backups in. Although Tyrod Taylor might already be in to start with anyway. But, the leading receiver is Darren Waller with 239 yards, and we're heading into week 6. The leading rusher is Daniel Jones with 197 yards, and he's got 2 passing touchdowns on the season. They're a bottom 5 scoring offense and defense. They have had a rough schedule. They've had Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, and Miami. But even their Arizona win was that one where it's a large comeback where they were up 23-0 down at halftime or whatever it was.
They let up 60 points and didn't score a single thing in the first 6 quarters of football. That's impressively bad.
They're a bad third down offense and defense. And again, I know it's a huge line, but where are the Giants scoring points from? And Buffalo, let's say, will want to put to rights. They'll just absolutely hammer the Giants. And I'm not quite sure why we keep getting the Giants in prime time, because whenever we see them, they just get absolutely obliterated. So they could genuinely be like a 50-7 kind of game here. I can see the Bills putting up 50 quite easily. Because let's say there's very few, if any, bright spots on that Giants team. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's too hard not to pick Buffalo here. I can't let you go without talking about Monday Night Football. Obviously, you're a Cowboys fan.
You didn't put that on the rundown. That's the only reason I agreed to come on.
It's just just a prediction, really. Obviously the Kellen Moore Bowl here. Mike McCarthy's offense does not look great at all. So we'll see how he looks against this Chargers defense. But what are your thoughts heading into that game?
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that I'm actually a Cowboys fan because the amount that I slight and the amount that I lambast them. But I think it says it all when you see the Chargers being one of the best teams in the red zone this year, and the Cowboys being one of the worst. Where you've got the related contingency being Kellen Moore. I'm a huge Kellen Moore fan to the point that I even did a YouTube video of Kellen Moore singing a song to Grease, "Tell Me More." But I won't bring that up. I think Chargers coming off a bye. Austin Eckler's back as well. I think we're just in a bit of a rut at the moment. And I've said plenty of times, and if you want to hear more about Cowboys rants, come join me on a Thursday. But I don't like the way Mike McCarthy goes about his work. I don't like the way he does things. I think that if you look at our games, we've either been very good because of our defense, or been very bad because our defense have been taken advantage of, like they did with San Francisco. So I expect Kellen Moore he would have circled this game as soon as he walked through the SoFi Stadium. So I'll be very interested to see what Kellen Moore does. And I'm not necessarily say he wants to embarrass Dallas, but I wouldn't begrudge him doing that, because I think he should have been the next Dallas Cowboys head coach when the opportunity came. But Chargers at home. I know who's Dallas home? I can't remember. Who's it? No,
I can't remember either. I've not got it written down in front of me.
I mean, it doesn't only matter because I think Chargers will win the game outright either way. But obviously, Mike Williams is a loss, so obviously they don't have all the weapons on offense. So it'd be interesting. But let's say it would just mean more stuff for Austin Eckler. So if he holds up, but yeah, I think we're a bit putrid on offense, a bit unimaginative. We can move the ball when we're not in the red zone. But yeah, I think we're a bit clueless when it comes to scoring points. And, we've had the defense kind of papering over our cracks a little bit. Until we change head coach and even kind of all the backroom stuff, I just don't think we're always good. We're always just going to be a team that gets to the playoff, maybe win one game and then go home. It's just that's just what it is. That's the difference between
same old Cowboys, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Until I've said this for years. When we come up against a good team, the golfing class just shows in coaching, play calling, and Just watch all of our playoff games or any games where we've played good teams, because we just struggle because we've got the talent, and it's sad because Dallas never used to have a good defense. They've got a good defense now, but it's just now being let down by we haven't got a good coach. Dan Quinn on defensive coordinator. He'll probably get a head coaching job next year because he's way overperformed. Or got way too much out of that Dallas defense with the players that we've got. So that's how I think it'll just be a continuous cycle until something materialistically changes.
Awesome. I can before I let you go, Tim. Obviously, the betting podcast is available on the same feed, so obviously it comes into your inbox every Thursday. So go check that out. Go check that out every Thursday night. But thank you for coming on, Tim. It's been great to have you on, and obviously you're welcome back on in the future as much as you like.
Yeah, maybe when the Dallas Cowboys after the week the Cowboys win a playoff game, I don't know.
Anyway, this has been the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, and we'll see you on Monday with the Week 6 recap.